China spent $300 million to revive a dying lake. And the results shocked US experts. Imagine a sacred lake, where for centuries people bathed, worshipped, and made their livelihoods, suddenly turning into a festering swamp, choked with toxic algae, oil slicks, and tourist waste. Seemingly on the brink of death, yet in just 3 years it was reborn. Over 40,000 tons of waste were dredged from its depths. Nearly 2,500 businesses were shut down overnight. And then, something unthinkable happened. Native fish returned. The water cleared. The ecosystem revived. This is a true story, unfolding at Lake Erhai in Yunnan, China. But this isn't just an environmental achievement. It reflects a broader national strategy, where ecological success becomes a lens to understand new forms of global influence. While the US debates green development, China has quietly tested an ecological governance model that could be exported. Join Top 10 Discoveries Official to uncover the secrets behind the miraculous revival of Lake Erhai and why it could reshape how the world views China's strength. Lake Erhai, located in Dali, Yunnan province, is a highland lake spanning about 250 kilometers, roughly 97 square miles, nearly the size of Salt Lake City, USA. At over 1,900 meters above sea level, this lake isn't just the primary water source for hundreds of thousands of residents, but a sacred cultural symbol, dubbed Mother Lake by the Bai ethnic community. More than a scenic gem, Lake Erhai was once the ecological heart of southwest China, with a rich ecosystem, diverse aquatic life and water quality at Class 2, suitable for domestic use after treatment. But all that changed in a single decade. From 2013 to 2016, tourism around the lake skyrocketed, from a few million to over 40 million visitors annually, per aggregated reports. Official data shows 9.18 million visitors in 2014, 10.3 million in 2015, and a staggering 15 million by 2016. This boom triggered a frenzy of investment in lakeside lodging and dining, with over 1,800 guest houses, hotels, and restaurants sprouting up in just a few years. In Shuanglang alone, over 600 businesses crowded into less than 1 kilometer. But behind the bustle lay an alarming reality. Most of these establishments lacked proper wastewater treatment systems, and many discharged directly into the lake. In less than a decade, the lake's water turned murky. Green algae blooms became frequent, following pollution spikes in 1996, 2003, and a severe resurgence in 2013. A foul stench enveloped stretches of the shoreline, with black foam drifting on the wind. The ecosystem began to collapse. Aquatic life vanished, submerged plants withered, and the water became unfit for domestic use or tourism. Local residents raised alarms, but by then, Lake Erhai was teetering on the edge of an irreversible ecological crisis. At the height of the crisis, Lake Erhai was no longer a pristine symbol of Yunnan's highlands. It had become an ecological wound, swollen, reeking, and nearly beyond self-healing. Under China's National Surface Water Classification System, GB 3838-2002, the lake's water quality plummeted to Class 4V, meaning Class 4, suitable only for industrial use or non-contact recreation. Class 5, limited to agriculture or landscaping, entirely unfit for domestic use or aquaculture. This was near the bottom of national standards. Lake Erhai, once Class 2, potable after treatment, had sunk to rock bottom in just a decade. The root cause was an explosion of organic matter, nitrogen, and phosphorus from thousands of lakeside guest houses and restaurants discharging untreated waste. Scientific studies labeled this nutrient overload, fueling algae blooms, oxygen depletion, and mass aquatic die-offs. Two stark indicators of decline stood out. Otelia acuminata, an endemic aquatic plant that once carpeted the lakebed, vanished completely between 2006 and 2009. This species, highly sensitive to pollution, is a bioindicator of clean water ecosystems. Its disappearance signaled the lake had crossed the threshold of self-recovery. Of the 8 endemic fish species recorded in the 20th century, 6 ceased to appear after 2000, including Cyprinus barbatus, and Poropuntius exiguus. Likely, locally extinct. The entire underwater food chain, sustained for millennia, collapsed in a decade. A lake can be cleansed with technology, but when endemic species vanish, the genetic foundation is severed, a loss that cannot be undone. And now, the big question arose. How could China bring this lake back from clinical death to vibrant life? No more thick reports, no months-long community consultations, and absolutely no room for compromise. In April 2017, Yunnan's provincial government issued an unprecedented order. All 2,400 guest houses, hotels, and restaurants around Lake Erhai, without compliant wastewater treatment systems, must shut down immediately. No prior warning, no preparation time, no exceptions. Within 24 hours, hundreds of businesses went dark. Signs came down. Once vibrant streets, teeming with tourists, fell silent. Local authorities deployed forces like a military campaign, inspecting every site, sealing every pipe, blocking every wastewater outlet. This wasn't a typical environmental campaign, it was a decisive intervention, aimed at reversing the effects of unchecked development that had endangered the ecosystem. A wordless declaration that China was willing to sacrifice billions in short-term tourism revenue for the long-term revival of Mother Lake. In some countries, such measures could face legal and public resistance due to differing regulatory frameworks and business protections. But in China, it's called something else: national strategic priority. When the environment is no longer a local issue but a foundation for asserting ecological leadership in the 21st century, such decisions aren't just right, they're imperative. After ruthlessly cutting off the disease's source by closing 2,400 lakeside businesses, China didn't stop at administrative measures. The next phase was a full-scale technical assault, tackling the toxic buildup in the lake accumulated over decades. Unlike typical environmental campaigns that address only surface issues, Dali's authorities dug to the root. Over 40,000 tons of waste, including household refuse, slow-decomposing organic matter, and nitrogen-phosphorus-rich sediment, were dredged from the lakebed and its feeder streams. These compounds had fueled algal blooms and severe oxygen depletion, killing aquatic life en masse. Removing this sludge was like draining pathogens from a body, restoring life to a near-clinically dead aquatic ecosystem. An unprecedented measure followed. 19 miles, 30.6 kilometers of wastewater pipelines were built encircling the lake, functioning as a biological barrier. This system collects all wastewater from residential areas, restaurants, hotels, and surrounding farmland, channeling it directly to centralized treatment plants, ensuring not a single drop of untreated water leaks into the lake. Where wastewater once flowed freely into the lake, it's now blocked like a fully sealed front line. To handle this massive wastewater volume, authorities invested in state-of-the-art treatment plants meeting national standards. Some facilities process tens of millions of gallons daily, sufficient to manage peak tourism season flows when millions visit Dali. These systems are monitored by real-time sensors, ensuring every drop is treated per protocol, a standard many Western cities still struggle to meet. The entire process, from blueprint to execution, took less than 18 months. In many countries, similar projects could take years due to multi-phase consultation and planning systems. This is why many observers call it an institutional miracle, a testament to the blend of political resolve, centralized governance, and technical resource mobilization that few nations can match at this scale. After severing pollution sources and purging toxic buildup, the next step in reviving Lake Erhai wasn't more factories or pipes. It was letting nature work. But in China, even nature is engineered with surgical precision. Instead of encasing the shoreline in concrete barriers, as seen in many Western cities, Dali's authorities returned land to nature. Over 2,000 acres, roughly 810 hectares, along the lake were built into artificial wetlands, hosting native and resilient aquatic plants like vetiver grass, Vetiveria zizanioides, renowned for absorbing heavy metals and stabilizing soil, water hyacinth, Eichhornia crassipes, and reeds, rapid absorbers of nitrogen and phosphorus from wastewater. These wetlands act as natural biofilters, purifying inflowing streams before they reach the lake's ecosystem. This is among the most advanced eco-engineering techniques, blending biology, topography, and water management. Unlike polluted U.S. lakes waiting months for EPA reports, Lake Erhai was equipped with real-time sensors at strategic points, monitoring metrics like clarity, turbidity, pH and dissolved oxygen, DO, nitrogen phosphorus loads, TNTP, bacterial and microbial density. This system not only enables scientists to intervene early when risks arise, but also connects to coordination centers, optimizing wastewater treatment, flow regulation, and emergency planning for sudden changes. The result: the ecosystem is managed like a living organism with blood pressure, pulse, and liver function. Every parameter read, analyzed, and addressed almost instantly. A vivid proof of this effort's success is the return of Otelia acuminata, the endemic aquatic plant that vanished from 2006-2009. This plant, highly sensitive to water quality, reappeared in 2020 per ecologists, not by chance, but as a result of recreating its ideal biological conditions, from nutrients to depth and light. In other words, when the ecosystem is clean and right, life returns on its own. The brilliance lies not just in the outcome, but the method. The entire process, plant selection, terrain design, sensor installation, treatment operations, water monitoring, was engineered like an operating system for nature. Policy, biological zone design, data, flow and concentration adjustments, technology, real-time processing and early warnings. This isn't environmental protection in the traditional sense. It's a new ecological governance model, where technology, data, and algorithms replace passive response with proactive control, like running a city with AI. Lake Erhai's ecological recovery didn't just save a lake. It overturned the local development model, creating a wholesale pivot from mass tourism to a green economy, where nature became the primary asset and data the new profit. Once, Lake Erhai was a haven for those seeking Yunnan's pristine highlands, but its rapid fame turned it into a victim of its own success. In 2015-2016, over 40 million visitors flooded the lake annually, a staggering figure for a 250-kilometer ecosystem. Dali's ancient streets buckled under the strain. Lakeside land was swiftly overrun by thousands of guest houses and mini hotels sprouting daily. The lake's surface was calm, but beneath it, an ecosystem was dying. Untreated domestic and commercial wastewater poured directly into the lake, local infrastructure eroded, and a fast-profit, short-life tourism model became the norm, at the expense of the environment and indigenous communities. Yet, after the state-led overhaul in 2017, an unthinkable scenario unfolded. Tourism recovered, not by reverting to the past, but by redefining the future. Yunnan's authorities imposed sweeping measures, capping visitors at 15,000 daily, roughly 5.4 million annually, an 85% drop from the peak. All tourists must pre-book eco-certified accommodations. Lakeside roads, once clogged with private cars, now allow only small, emission-free, silent electric vehicles. Surprisingly, while visitor numbers plummeted, per-tourist spending soared 2.5-fold. Services were redesigned, focusing on ecotourism, indigenous cultural experiences, and premium stays. Tourism stopped threatening the lake. It became a sustainable revenue stream nurturing it. The more is better development model was replaced by one of controlled, data-driven, high-value growth. The contrast is noteworthy. While many national parks around the world face over-tourism and infrastructure challenges, the Lake Erhai case presents a different model of regulated, technology-driven sustainability. Tourism doesn't have to ravage ecology if you have monitoring tech, real-time data, and the political will to prioritize the environment. Lake Erhai was once deemed unsalvageable, but by flipping the old development model, China didn't just save a lake, it crafted an exportable development philosophy. If tourism was the quantity, exerting direct pressure from sheer visitor numbers, agriculture was the quality, the silent, persistent root of Lake Erhai's ecological crisis. Before the 2017 reforms, most lakeside land was farmed traditionally. Garlic, rapeseed, and short-cycle crops dominated for their quick harvests and fast income. But this came with heavy chemical fertilizer and pesticide use on a vast scale. Farming often hugged the lake's edge, with no ecological buffer, so every heavy rain washed nitrogen and phosphorus straight into the lake. This was the primary driver of eutrophication, algae blooms, and water quality decline for years. However, local authorities didn't just ban harmful practices. They rolled out a rural livelihood restructuring strategy, encouraging farmers to switch to high-value, low-chemical, long-cycle crops suited to ecotourism supply chains. Crops like blueberries, cherries, and native fruits began replacing garlic and rapeseed fields. The state provided clean seeds, organic farming training, and, crucially, integrated farmers into tourism value chains. From supplying eco-restaurants with clean produce to retailing at premium lakeside resorts. The results were stark. Chemical, fertilizer use dropped over 60%, nitrogen and phosphorus runoff into the lake plummeted. Moreover, agricultural product value doubled, even tripled, as they were repositioned as premium, locally consumed goods. Farmers, once squeezed by traditional supply chains, became strategic partners in tourism, offering traceable, sustainable products aligned with green consumer trends. This wasn't just an agricultural win. It was a redefinition of farmers' role in ecological preservation. While the U.S. grapples with the fallout of industrialized agriculture, from nitrate-polluted groundwater in Iowa to pesticide crises in California's Central Valley, Yunnan is proving a key principle. Farming doesn't have to clash with conservation if farmers are transformed into environmental stewards, and fairly compensated for it. Lake Erhai isn't just reviving from its waters. It's being rebuilt from the soil, the agricultural ecosystem, and the people once seen as polluters, now guardians of their own future. On the surface, the Lake Erhai Restoration Project is an environmental campaign, rescuing one of China's most sacred lakes from the brink of collapse. Yet behind the numbers, pipelines, and returning aquatic life lies something deeper, an ecological model that quietly carries strategic significance. China is signaling that it's not just the land of the biggest dams, fastest trains, or tallest skyscrapers. It can, and will, do what most developed nations struggle with: restore a degraded ecosystem using technology and state organization. Compare this to the U.S. Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, hit hard by toxic algae in the 1960s, still hasn't fully recovered. Despite 24/7 EPA oversight and countless scientific studies, Toledo faces recurring drinking water alerts. In Iowa or California, nitrate pollution from agriculture continues to threaten groundwater, with no systemic solution effectively deployed. While ecological policy in countries like the U.S. often navigates complex legal and governance frameworks, China's approach relies on centralized coordination and swift implementation. And China isn't keeping this model to itself. Since 2018, delegations from developing nations like Kenya, India, and Egypt have visited Yunnan to study Lake Erhai's ecological restoration firsthand. They're not just learning water treatment, but how to reorganize agriculture, manage tourism, and deploy sensor technology, an integrated model the West hasn't fully applied. China, famed for exporting physical infrastructure, from high-speed rail to seaports, is now quietly exporting ecological technology as an extension of soft power. In a world increasingly threatened by climate change and resource depletion, environmental management is no longer a technical task. It's a strategic influence tool, but deeper still is something we can name: ecological statecraft, the art of wielding state power through ecology. If China can transform a clinically dead lake into a premium ecotourism destination in under 5 years, what could it do with transboundary rivers like the Mekong, Brahmaputra, or Amur, when downstream nations face droughts, floods, or biodiversity loss? The country controlling headwaters and ecological regulation holds the lever. A hydropower dam generates electricity, but a successful ecological model generates deep, lasting, and hard-to-replace political influence. While the U.S. debates legal frameworks for polluted lakes in Ohio or Louisiana, China has completed a replicable, deployable, and even commercializable prototype. The distinction lies not only in technology, but in how development is envisioned. as either a process that impacts the environment or one that begins with it as the foundation. And that's why, in formerly degraded landscapes, we're seeing a new paradigm emerge, where ecology is not just preserved, but integrated into the architecture of modern development. Lake Erhai's story isn't just a cleanup campaign. It's a declaration. Within 5 years, China didn't just save a lake, but rebuilt its entire ecological, economic, and governance system around it. From tourism and agriculture to data and policy, everything was redesigned with one goal: sustainable ecology. Not as a slogan, but as strategic action. If a lake falls to Class 4 degradation, could any nation order thousands of businesses to close in 24 hours without sinking into lawsuits and political backlash? In decentralized systems like the US, where stakeholder processes are layered and lengthy, achieving such ecological transformation at this pace poses a significant challenge. Because if not, the world may witness a new phenomenon: China leading not just in AI, railways, or clean energy, but shaping the future of global ecology. A new kind of soft power where the environment becomes a diplomatic tool, and ecological restoration a lever of 21st century political influence. This isn't a call to copy China's model, it's a wake-up call. If democratic nations can't respond fast enough, they risk falling behind not only in technology, but in the ability to rebuild the world post-climate disaster. And now, we want to hear from you. What part of China's ecological strategy surprised you the most? And do you think the US should follow their lead? Comment below, and let's take this conversation global with Top 10 Discoveries Official. Don't forget to subscribe to catch every geopolitical deep dive, transformative tech discovery, and big question shaping our future. Top 10 Discoveries Official will return with more astonishing breakthroughs, epic projects, and untold stories from across the globe. Goodbye and see you soon.